is Ray. I wanted to speak to you today about how you might use some support for your knees in your practice. Sometimes we go to a yoga practice and we're feeling fine with our knees during practice, but then later on in the day or the next day we feel like our knees are a little bit tweaky. So there's a couple of things I'd like to offer today. 3 things I'll go over. One is how to protect your knees. One is your knee alignment when you are in different postures. And the last one is when you're in a stretch for your hips. Sometimes when we're trying to stretch our hips, we feel a little bit tweaky in the knee, and I'll go over some options for that as well. One way we can help support our knees in our practice is simply adding some padding to our knees. Some of us have used a blanket folded up once or twice to give us some extra knee support when we're in hands and knees. This can be a nice support for the knees. Sometimes the blanket doesn't quite feel comfortable, and another option would be some extra padding or some different padding. This is actually just knee padding for gardening, but they have a wonderful product called Suka, and the Suka knee padding will be really nice on our knees. If you ever want to try one, please pick one up. They're wonderful. You do the same thing. You set your knees on the knee padding when you're in your hands and knees or in a lunge position. One thing that can happen is that the patella part of the knee being pressed onto the padding is the issue. So you can move that padding back just a half inch or so, and that takes the patella of the knee off of the padding and has a little bit of free form movement. You can also try tucking the toes in either of those options. A second way that our knee can get out of alignment during our yoga practice is during our standing postures. So I'll show you 3 ways in which that you can keep the knee aligned in those postures. I have these pants today that have a stripe on them and the stripe allows us to hopefully see when that knee is rolling in and out. You might try this at home in front of a mirror and just see if how your knee moves in some of these postures. The first posture is Warrior 2. In Warrior 2, I want my knee and my hip to be aligned, and if I drew a line down to my second or third toe, typically that would be the alignment for the knee and the hip. If I allow the internal rotation, the knee would fold in towards the big toe. You can see the stripe there on the side. That means I'm not engaging my outer hips. I want to engage those outer glute muscles, allow the knee to be better aligned. If I start to let the knee go too far externally, then I start to lift up my foot a little bit off the ground on that big toe side. So I want to keep the knee aligned. And that's the same for crescent lunge. The knee stays in that same position. And the same for chair posture as well. And in chair posture, sometimes the knees will roll in or roll out. I can help that by taking my feet wider to help with the internal rotation or external rotation of the thighs. A third way that we can optimize our yoga practice for our knees is whenever we do external hip stretches. These include the ones on our back and also seated. So the first thing you can do in seated postures is to make sure that you have enough height underneath. Even more than this, you could fold up the blanket again. This allows so that the knees are not higher than the hips, the knees are lower. And when we set up our hip stretch, we want to make sure that we are flexing the ankle. That always helps for most of our hip stretches. And also that we're not letting the knee float off the ground. We want to make sure that this knee and shin are supported on the ground so we don't put extra pressure on that point. And Rajakapotasana, another posture we often do in our classes, we will bring the knee into alignment here, aligned with the hip, but the knee may not even be supported on the ground. This can add extra tweakiness around the knee because we're not giving it support. We're actually forcing some load on it in a way that we don't need to when we really want to be just getting the hip. So if you're finding in Rajakapotasana, in whatever form that you're doing this, that the knee is coming off the ground, maybe throw that posture away. We can spend a whole entire episode just on this posture, and instead come onto your back and come into sleeping pigeon. Flexing your ankle, that keeps the knee aligned in the shin, and then you allow the hands to come to the thigh and you keep the foot on the ground. And in this position, we are allowing ourselves to move around the thigh bone in the hip as much as we need to without putting extra pressure on that knee joint.